While participation rates for soccer is relatively high in Vancouver anyways, the audience rates are down. Why do you think this is?
We know that the growth of sports audiences isn't a consistent curve. It's kind of goes up, drops, goes up, drops, goes up. And the fact of the matter is outside of Canada, the television audiences for hockey are not particularly stunning either. So, you know, my guess is that we're probably going to, it won't be long before hockey audiences and football or soccer audiences in Canada are fairly comparable.
Is that why, I guess, it could be argued soccer isn't as popular as hockey in North America, because it doesn't have that, or it's not seen in this country as having that masculinity and having resonating with stereotypical Caucasian Canadians?
It could be that. It could be that. It could be a certain amount of racism, or at least if not xenophobia, or at least a kind of fear of the other. It was one of the prominent sports early on, and then was in some ways pushed to the cultural periphery, particularly in the baby boom era, when the country began to change. It became less English, for instance, and in some ways more American.
Roland Barthes once said, "Wrestling is not sport, it is a spectacle, and it is no more ignoble to attend a wrestler's performance of suffering than a performance of the sorrows of Arnulf or Andromache." Do you think the same is relevant to hockey, in that while the fans may come for the artistry, they stay for the fights?
Like, what is the most exciting part of a game? You say, oh, the goals, or, you know, when the team wins. And yeah, to an extent, I can see that at the odd time, perhaps. If a team wins in overtime or something like that, you know, that's always super exciting. But when do you hear the loudest cheer other than that? I say it's when the fights happen. When is every single person in the audience standing up? Say when they score goals and when there's a fight. And you could definitely make a case for that. I know it's one of those things when you're at a game and someone gets up and starts fighting, you know, a couple of guys start duking it out, everyone's up. And you think, oh, that's stupid, you know, sit down. The person stands up in front of you and you gotta get up too because you want to get a good, you know, view of the match and everything. And I don't know if it's one of those things where you're a little bit shocked that these guys are being able to, you know, duke it out in front of you like that. But everybody's up, everybody's cheering, cussing, yelling, and everybody's right into it. And a lot of people think he should be taken out of the game because he doesn't have a spot. That's another whole topic in itself for why fighting is good or not good for hockey. But sure, there's a definite spectacle.
Come on, white winners!
Why is it that Canada's national team in general still remains low in the FIFA rankings?
Lack of development. There's no real pro league. I mean, I know the Whitecaps are joining the MLS, and Montreal, I think, is in the MLS. So maybe that'll improve, but it's just there's no real big domestic league, and there's no real big hype around it, no big stars or anything. So nobody really cares, you know. You got the Vancouver Canucks, you know, you got Sedins and these superstars that are making millions of dollars. I mean, people want to see them play, right?
Our group hypothesized that, while participation rates in soccer remain at a steady level, audience viewership rates are in a state of steady decline. Our group's method of research was to compare this alleged decline with the audience viewership rates of hockey. The group asked the question, why has there been a steady decline in audience viewership of soccer? The group asked if it's because Vancouverites are consumed with supporting a sport that resonates with their sense of national pride. We also delve deeper into the issue and ask what factors result in the decline of soccer audience viewership rates.
There is a hardcore group of hockey fans for whom that is the game, and that is a central part of the game. And anybody who doesn't understand that is somehow at best excessively gentrified, an elitist, a wimp, a mushy head, someone who doesn't really understand the game, and at worst, somehow someone whose Canadianness might be called into question.
People call us wimps, you know, because it's not a contact sport. But someone who doesn't play the game, it's easy to say that. And you know, it takes a lot of heart to play, and to watch people play soccer in Canada, you don't see that. You don't see kids play with heart. And you go see kids in Europe, and you know, everyone's fighting for the same thing. You know, every kid is fighting for that same role, and that's to become a professional footballer. And that's what Canada lacks, is the heart and the inspiration to do so.
Hockey is ingrained within the Canadian culture, as you know, just like soccer is over there, for example. Cricket is in India, et cetera, et cetera. It's what we grew up with, it's what we know best, and it's what we grew up playing. It's the first sport that you learn, I mean, in a lot of ways. And it's one of those things that is ingrained in your personality and in your social livelihood and such. Soccer is way behind in Canadian culture. It's catching up pretty fast now with the addition of the MLS and the Whitecaps and such. It's bringing it to everybody's front door in Vancouver and BC, which we haven't quite had before. You know, at least as far as soccer at that level. So I don't know what it is, whether it's like the big body checks, the fighting, also there's a ton of, the NHL is dominated by Canadian players. Lots of Canadian guys play as well, whereas with soccer you have lots of guys from overseas and such coming over and playing as well. So it's maybe it's more relatable to us in that sense. Again, ice, cold in Canada. a lot of people, from our area of BC have played on a frozen, pond and such, played hockey on that and learned to skate on one. So there's that connection as well. So I think that's why people identify with hockey as, on a heightened level.
Through conducting the survey, we were supplied with the results from 54 people, 17 males and 35 females. We are confident that the results of the survey yielded useful results. Having 54 respondents gave us a good idea of how sport participation and sport viewership, particularly in soccer and hockey, are related.
Do you prefer to watch football or hockey?
Here I prefer watching watching hockey, for sure.
What reason?
I went to the Whitecaps game with my dad last year, and he couldn't figure out what the difference was. And when he was watching the game, and he goes to me, "Do you know what?" But he says, "There's no police here," and I thought it was quite an interesting comment. But I think the atmosphere is better at the Canucks. Like beforehand at the Shark Club, everyone's got their jersey on, and the crowd's pretty knowledgeable, and it's always full. So I just prefer the atmosphere.
North American fans in general are more about goals and they want instant satisfaction, where soccer is not that kind of a sport. It's more of a chess game, and you've got to appreciate it for what it is.
For the focus group portion of our research, we decided to gather a group of both hockey fans, soccer fans, as well as hockey and soccer players. Paul, one of the participants of the focus group, works as a professional soccer referee and provided a valuable insider perspective to the discussion. As Dave stated during the focus group, which was widely agreed upon, the reason for stoppage of soccer was due to a switch of focus that was related to either a switch of sport or lack of time.
To be honest, since we live in Canada, we don't get very much football. I like watching it, but just the time to wake up, I love my sleep, and I don't
like I don't usually wake up to watch games, but during obviously World Cup I watch every game, and during Champions Leagues I watch because it's not that early, so it's good.
The older I got, the more I moved away from watching it. It was more focusing on my play. I still watch it sometimes, but it is difficult because I'm in school in the mornings and I don't really have the time to watch the daytime football, so kind of moved more to watching North American soccer, like the Major League Soccer, just because it's on during prime time, which kind of benefits me, and I like watching the game grow in North America.
Once in a while I watch like Champions League games and stuff like that, you know, stuff everybody watches, but even when I was playing the game I never really watched it.
That's right.
We've got a sport like hockey that is just so dominant within our culture that it's kind of like a lot of the time people are kind of one or the other, not necessarily both. Like, you know, you only have so much time to put into a certain passion, and people are just going to kind of throw themselves into hockey or whatever it is, versus being in Europe and things like that where it's the predominant sport and it takes on a whole life of its own.
To be fair with the boring aspect, I mean, hockey has its boring moments.
Absolutely.
As well.
Definitely. Absolutely.
With the clutch and hooking and, you know, teams that play the trap. And there's games that can't be that, or aren't that exciting. And there's other sports that, I mean, baseball, I can't watch a 9-inning baseball game.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people find baseball boring.
Other than like the World Series. And soccer has some good moments, like the World Cup. Is, you know, everybody gets excited about the World Cup.
Definitely.
So, I mean, every sport goes through ups and downs with the entertainment facet of it. So I think soccer gets a bad rap sometimes because a lot of the games end up 0-0 a lot.
I think being a hockey fan and not being so much of a soccer fan, I think, you know, growing up and having this sport to watch and, you know, playing it as a little kid, and I think, you know, that's pretty much why I enjoy it so much and enjoy watching it. It's part of our heritage, it's part of our culture. And soccer, you know, maybe if I was living in Europe or something like that, you know, I'd probably be going to as many soccer games as I do Canuck games, but I think just growing up in Vancouver, being in such a big hockey town, you know, growing up watching the Rock'em Sock'ems that Don Cherry makes of all the highlights of every season, just gets your blood flowing, and that's why I'm such a big hockey fan. I just love it. So.
I think youth soccer is doing a great job. In Canada, we have it's more popular. Amateur soccer is more popular than amateur hockey. There's a lot more kids participating in soccer, so I think it's great. I think what the next move is, we need to develop the professional side of the game, bring that into Canada. That's something we're lacking, and not just develop healthy young children, but also develop professional soccer players. And I think that's the way the country is going, hopefully, but still a lot to tell. Canada needs its own professional league. And if they are going to play in Major League Soccer, they need caps on Canadian players that they're allowed on their team, which is way too low right now. It's only 3 players out of a 30-man roster. I do think the national team needs its own league, just because it'll give players opportunities, players who might have gone unnoticed, and end up in England just like Owen Hargreaves did. And the second thing the national team needs to start doing is capping players at a younger age. which is what a lot of the other countries are very successful at. So they kind of tie them down to their national team, and there's no ifs and buts about where they're going to play. And a lot of these players at 16, 17 might feel safer to pick the Canadian national team and take that opportunity. Whereas if you let them kind of grow with their career, they might start rethinking things and going to other national teams. I think you have to realize in the end it is a sport. It's not life. As much as it is a big part of your life, it is a big part of mine, but it's important to balance it and to realize it's not the only thing. And I think with being in a professional environment, you're really so committed to the team, and a lot of your free time is devoted to the team, so it's very difficult to do other things. So once you stop playing, you really don't know what to do, because you spent your whole time doing this, and it's very difficult for some players to adapt to that. I think one thing I've been fortunate with is the university environment gives you a little bit of balance. You get to play the sport at a high level, and you get to kind of see other sides of the picture and do different kinds of things.
The university soccer, it is fast paced and is higher, but it's not significantly that much of a difference from like the men's Premier League here. Like, the players are a lot more fit, which is the worst part. So that's why it's how high paced the full game. But if you go in Europe, I'm sure the players are quality and everything. I've been to Europe and I've played in tournaments there with kids who are playing under professional contracts, and it was, like I said, it was the same. But that was when I was 14, so I don't know how it would be now. Probably kids are a lot better.
Is it harder for players to make a name for themselves coming from a more hockey-saturated country as Canada?
Absolutely, absolutely. I feel if my family didn't choose to move from Europe to Canada, I feel like I'd already be in some sort of professional contract with some sort of team, because that's all it is. There's, even from smaller division teams, people are looking. Here in Canada, they are starting to look more, but it's extremely difficult. Once I graduate from SFU, I want to go to UBC Med or another med school and try to get the doctor, and then become a doctor, and then hopefully after that get specialized in plastic surgery and then become a plastic surgeon.
Did you always want to be a doctor, or is this just
yeah, I think I wanted to be a lawyer before, but then I realized I hate English, so I decided I wanted to become a doctor.
This time around, I didn't actually quit. I actually got pretty much released from my contract with discipline problems. So that's basically where that's at now.
Did you have a contingency plan in case soccer fell through, like plan B?
No, actually, I didn't realize I would actually be really going professional until I was about 15, when it actually, was coming to a time where it's like I had to go full-time soccer. I didn't really think it was going to happen, so I don't know. I was just told I was talented at a young age, and made my dad happy.
And if you stay out of the game for whatever reason, what would you do?
Well, a lot of my skills are in soccer, so I'd probably stick around in the game somehow, either doing training, coaching, something around that. Yeah.
What advice would you give to youngsters who want to get into playing professional soccer?
I'd give them advice if they could actually listen to it. A lot of kids, you want to give them advice, you want to tell them something, but it's like they could hear what you're saying, but they're not really understanding it, which is, that's just a learning curve for everybody, I think if I was to give myself advice, I would just say, don't try to rush it, don't try and, everyone wants to be the superstar at 17 or something like that, it's kind of like a marathon rather than a sprint,
It's the external factors that got to me, and soccer was something I realized at my age. I mean, yeah, I'm a baby to the football world if I want to become a professional, but at the same time, is it gonna lead me to a career where I can finish it within 12 years and say that's my life? I get to live it.
It's so driven by a kind of process of commodification. It's about profit maximizing, and it's about the way in which these leagues have historically operated. An economist in Victoria, he's retired now, wrote a really terrific article in the 60s about profit maximization and the way in which the North American sport leagues tried to do that. And it was about gaining complete, more or less monopolistic control over your labor market, and at the same time being the only seller. So the NHL became Major League largely by pushing its rivals to the periphery, integrating them into, and when they'd pushed them, their rivals, to a point of almost financial extinction, then integrating them into some sort of a feeder system, or else just watching them go out of business, and then controlling their labor market. So you don't want rival leagues because you don't want people bidding for players. So Major League Sport has been very much about that. I mean, these are cartels, and so the history of cartel formation in sport means that as this becomes just like any other area of political economy, then maybe it's not that much more interesting than watching the stock market or anything. Well, I mean, people get excited about that too, but there's just so much of it that you can't maintain your interest and have a day job.
Here comes goal.